If you didn't know already, Sony has been under a lot of fire for their recent DRM situation, which is where they rolled out a new DRM policy with their firmware update about a month ago, and people began noticing that there was a timer visible, but it wasn't showing on PlayStation 5, just PS4. Now, the biggest thing is DRM has been a thing for a while. Now, a lot of people have talked about it, and they've talked about how DRM, basically just proves that you don't actually own your games, you're just owning the permission to play them. Now, if you don't know how DRM works, well, DRM is digital rights management. It's defined as the use of technology to control and manage access to copyrighted material. It's basically going to answer one question. Is this person allowed to use this right now? So, when it comes to digital gaming, PlayStation uses DRM to figure out if you actually own a copy of the game. And it has evolved quite a bit, but modern DRMs like Denuvo, they encrypt the game files and they require online verification to play. And these online-based DRMs can be revoked without your consent, and it has a potential for a lot of errors. I mean, think Nintendo, they have a few errors, and it could pretty easily be abused by a lot of companies. And I believe PlayStation has been trying to make these changes, as Denuvo has been pretty much, made redundant, as a lot of people who tend to try and crack games have a lot of bypass techniques that can deceive Denuvo into thinking certain things are legitimate. Even these massive games, I mean, most recently Crimson Desert, they are being just bypassed within absolute just hours, and it makes Denuvo just look pretty useless as a anti-piracy measure. So it seems that PlayStation has sort of tried to fix their issues. I mean, they've had DRM issues for quite a while. Basically, if I were to give you a really quick rundown of how it works, is that PlayStation 5s always have DRM built in, right? They always have a form of it, always built in, and any console, it can only be fully functional when you're connected to the PlayStation network, because the PlayStation network is the best at maintaining date and time. But if you lose that connection, the consoles have to rely on this internal battery to, keep the date and time. So if that battery is killed, or it just is removed, or something bad happens to it, many things could probably happen. All the games that you have digitally, so not your physical copies, all your digital copies, they become unplayable because you can't verify the date and the time, which basically it's known as a ticking clock. Right? The mandatory time checks and things like that will brick your games. On the PlayStation 4, it was a lot worse because it would extend to physical games. Your physical games would also be bricked if the battery was bricked. But recently, people started seeing a 30-day timer appear on a lot of their new digital purchases. It was around April of this year, so just about a month ago now. And people are right to be pretty, paranoid about the situation, because if you look at the history of PlayStation, you can see why it becomes sort of a scandal. Now, like I said earlier, talk about the March firmware update. They released a new DRM policy, and people will notice that this this field with the countdown timer was only appearing on these newly purchased games. And this was realistically just to combat exploits where people would buy a game and they'd extract the license and refund the game and get it for free. It was a big thing that has been happening recently. I mean, if you look at a few, websites, you'll find information pretty quickly on how people are doing it. Not like a step-by-step guide, but, what people are actually doing to get past all these systems that are in place. Now, Sony didn't really say anything for a while. I mean, people were just building up their, scare factor, I guess, for this sort of situation. Worried that, if they don't check in every 30 days, the license is going to get revoked. They won't be able to play their games. They won't have access to their games. If you're enjoying this video so far and you think that PlayStation is doing some pretty sketchy stuff, then make sure you subscribe for more information, as I'm going to have a few more videos popping up about PlayStation, as they're making some very interesting decisions so far. Sony did speak up recently, and they said that a one-time online check is required after purchase to confirm the game's license, after which no further check-ins are needed. So it seems that instead of, the worry, which was a 30-day timer, and you have to check it every single 30 days, if your PlayStation goes without internet, which, to be fair, a lot of people aren't gonna go without internet, but let's say there is a reason you don't have internet, you lose the games that you've paid for. I mean, you should, by all rights, since you have purchased that game, you should be able to play it whenever you want. And for people who own digital PlayStation 5s, for example, I've got a digital PlayStation 5 sat here right next to me. I don't have any physical PS5 games, so if I had issues with my DRM and my PlayStation sort of bricked it, for example, if we had this, game check, right? And for some reason, let's just say the internet doesn't work, I don't have internet, I wouldn't have access to any of the games I've purchased. Spider-Man, recently Invincible Versus came out, I wouldn't have access to that because the PS5 cannot check that I actually own the game. And a lot of people do, I'm going in looking at what people are saying here. And it seems like a lot of people just think that they are going back on their words. They did plan to do a 30-day thing, but, you know, after seeing the backlash, I mean, the massive just outrage and outpour from, you know, the people who play PlayStation and use the console, they sort of reverted the change, which I think is very possible. I think they probably did, you know, because it was a while that they just didn't say anything. They didn't make any statements. I mean, the only statement, that we got was, now I'm gonna have to pause myself here just to let you guys know that everything beyond this point, until I finish talking about this AI chatbot statement, is purely speculative. Now, I am not 100% sure that this is real, and a lot of people have been asking the AI chatbot as well, and it seems that now they can't find any information on the topic. So take everything you hear here with a grain of salt, but keep in mind that this could very well be real, but at the same time, it could very well be not. From an AI chatbot. Now, I'm going to read this out, what this person on Twitter went and asked their PlayStation support. If I go offline for 30 days, I will need to reconnect to the internet and activate the game, right? The PlayStation support replied, that is correct. You will need to connect to the internet at least once every 30 days for the licenses to continue working. To which the person replied, thank you. So this means that they were planning to make it show that you literally could not access your games if you do not do a manual check-in on PlayStation once every 30 days. I mean, it's pretty much set in stone. They went back, and it is very interesting that they tried to do this. I don't think this is the last time they'll try and do this. I don't know what other people think, but I don't believe that this is the last time they will try and mess around with the DRM and try and, you know, revoke, you know, access. As I mentioned in another video, a lot of CEOs and, you know, people in high up, they are mentioning things that, you know, players should be used to not owning the games they buy. I mean, technically, you don't actually own the game you buy. You don't own it at all. You just own the permissions to play it. You own the license to it, which is a really bad thing. That's why a lot of people are saying you should just buy the physical copies, because you do get to keep it. Now, obviously, the big thing with physical copies is if you scratch them or mess them up, you know, obviously you can't use them. You know, anyone who's used a disc or a system like that, you know, you have to be decently careful because you don't want to mess up the disc. The fact is you can just get your access revoked, and this won't be the last time they try and pull a stunt like this. There won't be the last time they try and do this. And these scandals really put them in a bad light, because Xbox right now, I mean, if it's not all PR, they're making good changes, and they're going to keep on making good changes. So PlayStation is just making bad change after bad change, and one of the changes I've just seen that they're making is age verification, which I'm going to talk about very soon. And, you know, PlayStation stocks did crash with this, you know, scandal. I mean, if I look at what I've seen here, at the end of April, the stocks dropped by just under 5% over around 5-ish days, which is pretty interesting to say the least. I mean, people were pretty, you know, worried about the DRM laws, and if PlayStation does keep going the way they are going, I think in, you know, maybe a few years or a year or so, just something like that, they'll try and introduce something like this. Even if it's not the same wording, it will be a way to make it so that you have to be connecting to PlayStation Online. You have to be doing this. You have to be very active in, you know, giving these companies what they want. Otherwise, the game you think you own, your access will be revoked. So this is just one of the things that shows this to me very clearly. But, you know, I want to know what you think. What do you think about this, you know, DRM situation? And do you think that, you know, Sony's just trying to cover their backsides by just going back on, you know, oh, well, no, it's just a one-time check instead of an every 30 days thing? Because if it gets to the point where it's every 30 days, who's to say they won't reduce it again? It's just a very flawed system. Very, very flawed system that they should never implement. Anyway, comment down below what you think, and thank you very much for watching.